Showtime! Welcome to the show. I'm Brent Holland. Welcome to Night Fright. Folks, settle in. We're going to be talking about ghosts tonight. We're going to be talking about vampires. Paul Kimball's back with us. Several weeks ago, he was on the show. Hi, Paul. Welcome back. Several weeks ago, he was on the show. We talked about UFOs. He's a filmmaker out of Halifax, just to bring you up to speed, those of you that are just joining us for the first time. Nova Scotia, of course. He's written all kinds of great documentaries, one including that is in the archives we just talked about, Best Evidence, Top 10 UFO Sightings. Tonight we're going to be looking at a series that he wrote about ghost cases, and a feature film he's written and produced called Eternal Kiss, which is all about vampires. And as you know, anything with Paul Kimball, we are going to go out there on the edge. It's going to be a great show, folks. Settle in, strap in, hang on, here we go.
There is a time to question. There is a time for answers. There is a time to challenge. There is a time to speculate. There is a time for change. There is a time for truth. The time is now. Welcome to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio. And now your host, Brent Holland.
Welcome, folks. Welcome to Night Fright. I'm your host, Brent Holland. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are going down to Nova Scotia, and we're going to be talking with Paul Kimball tonight. Paul Kimball, as you remember, was on the show several weeks ago. We talked about his Top 10 UFO Sightings, Best Evidence documentary, and that's in the archives at www.nightfrightshow.com. Tonight, Paul makes his triumphant return, and he's changed his hat. And we are going to be looking at several things he's created. One of them is called Ghost Cases. The other one is a feature film called Eternal Kiss. Pardon me. Let's start off, Paul. I want to welcome you back to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be back.
Just seems like minutes since we spoke. Let's talk about ghost cases. What was the inspiration? What was the idea for you to undertake? I mean, UFOs, ghosts, vampires are all in the same paranormal realm, if you will. But usually there's a lot of purity from the UFO guys. They don't like, I get this a lot, especially from the JFK assassination guys. They don't like sometimes the fact that I do ghost shows, the UFO shows, things like that. They want to be strictly associated with all seriousness and things like that. You seem to have an eclectic view of things. What made you go into the ghost realm? Was there something that sparked your interest from the UFO documentary?
Yeah, the UFO documentaries ended and I needed a job. So
good answer.
There's a producer in Halifax who has a different company than mine. His name's Dale Stevens. I had gotten to know Dale. He approached me as I was winding up. I hadn't started production on Eternal Kiss yet, but he knew that I was going into that. It was the summer of 2008. He said, "Look, I have this TV series idea about ghosts. It was originally called Maritime Ghosts, but we changed the name to Ghost Cases." The network that he had tentatively sold it to, Eastlink down here, wanted, Dale had worked in the television industry, but he had never run his own show. So the network said, "Look, we'd like you to partner with somebody who has." And I had gotten to know Dale. He knew of my interest in the paranormal. So he asked me, he said, "Look, would you be interested in doing a co-production?" And I said, "Well, when's this going to happen?" And he said, "Whenever you want, but it can start in October." I said, "Great," because I'm wrapping up Eternal Kiss at that time, and frankly, I don't have anything to do. So sure. Plus, I was interested in ghosts. I thought looking at another aspect of the paranormal would be fun and different. And so originally I was just going to write and direct and produce it with Dale, but I wound up hosting it or co-hosting it with my friend Holly Stevens too. So I wound up, producer, writer, director, and host, the ghost host, which was not the original intention. But as it turned out, we sort of decided the original hosts, while they were very serious sort of about their ghost hunting, as you would know with television, particularly reality television, a lot of it has to do with the personalities that are in front of the camera. And they were lovely people. They just weren't very personable on camera. Too serious, probably, in a good way. So, if you want serious ghost investigators, they're the people to call. If you want a couple of crazy, sort of off-the-wall characters who are also serious and also interested in the subject, but, well, that was Holly and I. So we wound up kind of taking over and hosting the series. And, it was, I sort of call it a wild ride, partly because Holly's nuts, but so am I. But, we went to all sorts of interesting places, met interesting people, and unlike the UFO stuff, where it had always been sitting down, I would be here, you would be there, I'd interview you, I'd construct a narrative based on witness accounts and everything. But as we talked about in the last episode a couple of weeks ago, I've never seen a UFO. So it was very much a historical documentary kind of thing. It's great, I love doing that stuff. The ghost thing was different. We would get that. I'd interview you about your experience. I'd go talk to other people about it. But then I insisted, and we created it this way, that it had to be very experiential. Kind of the Scooby-Doo haunted house thing. Can you spend a night in a haunted house? I mean, I think we all sort of like that idea. We all grew up with it, watching television shows or reading stories about people who I've invited 12 of my friends to come to my haunted mansion. Whoever can get through the night inherits the $1 million. Well, Holly and I didn't get $1 million. Definitely didn't get $1 million. But the idea was that we would spend that night in a haunted house or allegedly haunted location and see what happened. See if we could have a direct personal experience. And as it turned out, we had several personal experiences. Sometimes we'd go to a place, nothing would happen.
Hold that thought. I'm going to tell people we're speaking with. Folks just joining us, settle in. Get the coffee going, get the tea going. If you're driving on the 401, ease off the gas pedal ever so slightly, and we're going to check out a great ride tonight. We're going to be talking about ghosts, that's right, and also vampires with none other than Paul Kimball has returned. As you remember last time, Paul Kimball's a filmmaker from Nova Scotia. He, as you can tell by his hat, it's called Red Star Films. He produced a terrific documentary, and we discussed it last time, called Best Evidence Top 10 UFO Sightings. Tonight we're going to be looking at another show he's produced called Ghost Cases. And it gets eternal kisses.
Vampire.
Oh my God. Paul's been up for quite a while tonight, folks, and he's a little bit punchy, and that's great. It's going to make for a great show. So settle in, put your feet up. Here we go. You said you had some ghost experiences. Well, as fans of the show know that watched your previous show, you never saw a UFO, but you saw ghosts or ghosts?
Well, what is a ghost? That's an interesting question, too. It was called Ghost Cases, and they were supposedly haunted places. But as we talked about in the last show, that idea of the other, of an advanced non-human intelligence, of something, I don't have any answers. Even after 13 episodes of doing Ghost Cases, I can't tell you that it's Great Aunt Myrtle coming from the beyond or whatever. I don't know. All I know is that things happen to us, none of which fit the stereo. I never saw a lady in white floating down the hallway. So I didn't see Casper. So that kind of ghost experience didn't happen.
So what happened then?
All sorts of strange stuff. I mean, depending on which day you ask me, I have a different favorite story. Today, my favorite story happens to be St. Edith's Church in Schochlac, which it's not even a town. It's a collection of, well, there is a town of Schochlac, but about 3 or 4 miles outside town, the middle of nowhere near the Welsh border with England. There's this very old church. It dates, I think, from the 14th century, maybe the 13th century, but it's hundreds and hundreds of years old, long before even Columbus, or well, before Columbus got here, certainly before we were here. So when we think, oh, this building in Halifax is 200 years, it's very old. Yeah, it's nothing compared to a church like St. Edith's. So there's a cemetery, there's a church. It's a wonderful looking old church. And we were working with a couple of friends of mine in a group called the Unknown Phenomena Investigation Association. Pretty sure I got that right. I almost always mess that up. Anyway, UPIA for short. If you Google UPIA, they'll pop up. Very good guys. A guy named Dave Sadler and a guy named Steve Mara in particular were the two that we were working with for 4 episodes. We went to England to do 4 episodes. And Dave had been to this cemetery and this church many times. We didn't get inside the church. We went there, it was closed. It was the exterior of the church. He'd had a number. Dave's a very skeptical guy. So when Dave tells me that he thinks this place has the wow factor, as they say on Storage Wars, the wow factor, and he says he's experienced stuff. He doesn't like saying the term paranormal. Even the term paranormal makes him go, So when he says he experiences something, was it paranormal, Dave? Well, there was a girl who started here and suddenly appeared at the other edge of the church, the daughter of one of my friends. Well, that's paranormal, Dave. That's like a 35-second sort of run for a little kid. Well, I don't know if it's paranormal, Paul. Dave, it's paranormal. Yeah, no, I guess it is kind of paranormal. That's a place I want to go to. Because, time slips, there were audio anomalies that people had reported there, all sorts of stuff. So anyway, we go, we do what we always do, which is a walkthrough on the location. Holly and I get in a fight. No, wait, that was after the show. We split up into groups anyway. I joke about Holly. Holly, if you're in BC, she lives in BC now. If you're watching this, love you. And so we split up. And
you see now, Paul, that's a bad thing to do because, as they always say, never split up. And yet, inevitably, they always split up. And you know what happens at that point?
Yeah, crazy stuff. Crazy stuff happens. The long and the short of it is, the first person to get hit, I'll call it get hit by weirdness, was Holly. The sun hadn't even gone down. And Holly was standing in a particular area near the church, unbeknownst to us, where other people had reported weird sensations. So there's this scene, and you can go to our website. I think I have this episode up. If it's not on our website, it is on the internet. I did post this. So the case of the haunted graveyard, I think, or whatever. And you get to the website, obviously, through your site. Steve Mara comes over and says, oh, hello, Holly. It seems like you're a bit out of sorts. What's the problem? And she says, she's really kind of, she has a bachelor's degree in biology. She's a very intelligent, sensitive, sensible person. But she's really weirded out. And she said, I just get this feeling, and I heard the sound of horses on cobblestones. Clip, clop, clip, clop. Which was one of the stories that we had heard. There's nothing that could make that sound. We sussed the fields and everything out. There's a muddy sort of track path that goes by. You can see in the episode, it's like, could it have been actual something, a cow, a horse from these fields over here walking along? And we cut to a picture of, well, if you can make a cobblestone-y kind of sound in that mud, I guess, but no. And there were cows, but they were far away. So she was weirded out by this, and Steve goes, well, this is the place, people have reported hearing it kind of here. And then Dave Sadler comes over and says, what you've told me is exactly, if Dave ever sees this, he'll go nuts. He's like, what you told me is exactly what dozens of other people have told me. And, this feeling of just being out of sorts and weirdness. Okay, so nothing's happened to me yet, and nothing's happened to Dave yet, or Steve, or anybody else. But Holly gets hit first. I go off, the sun's starting to set, it's pretty much down, and from the Welsh border you can see the sky is not completely dark, because there is some illumination from a town miles and miles away, like a night sky. The moon, I believe, was at least at half, so there's it's not totally pitch dark. And I sit myself down at the back of the church, or it could have been the front, I was never sure about that, and there's a little bench there and a little alcove, and the crew was off filming one of the other people doing something. And all of a sudden, I was looking up into the night sky, and I saw what I have since described this is how I relate to it, a science fiction sort of fan, a portal opening. So if you've got a sky that is, I don't know, here we go. If you've got Michio Kaku's book Vision, if you've got a sky that's like that dark, then all of a sudden,
Paul Kimball, by the way, folks, we're talking about his series called Ghost Cases, and he's taking us through one that took place in England right now. Sorry, Paul.
So, no worries. You've got the sky like this, and then all of a sudden, something pops up in front of it, and then disappears. But it's like the teddy bear to the book. It's clearly, or to the wall. It's clearly discernible against the background. It's not a teddy bear. It's not a owl or something. It's literally we had an animator do a reasonably lousy job of recreating it on a low budget, but like, and then. So that didn't tell anyone about that.
How come?
Because I come from the school of thought that says I don't want to look like a complete idiot. That sounds crazy. I'm the skeptical guy. I don't want to seem like a nut who saw portals in the sky. But my co-producer, Dale Stevens, who I'd mentioned before, wanders over and he says, "You're not going to believe what I just saw over there in a different spot." And I went, I don't know. What'd you see? And he said, he described it slightly differently, but it was, black, the sky's here, and then it suddenly, I won't bring the teddy bear back. It suddenly got black, and no, he's over there. And he didn't describe it as a portal, but it was exactly, he's talking about what I saw. And I said, well, it's funny you mentioned that, because you saw it over there. Guess what I saw, I don't know, about 10 minutes over there. And he went, really? Oh, well, got to get the camera crew over and interview you. And I was still, if you think I'm hyper now, I was like hyper. You can watch the episode and go like, I'm like hyper. This is, wow, crazy stuff.
Were you frightened? Were you?
No, not at all. For one thing, I was surrounded by, in various places and different away from me. But, it's like, help, I'm being abducted by aliens or something. No, I wasn't frightened at all. I was intrigued. I was fascinated. It's like, this is cool. Now, if Cthulhu had walked out of the hall, yeah, I'd probably be a little frightened. But it was just this, I call it a void. It was like a void in the sky. And so now I've been hit. And my co-producer, Dale, has been hit. Steve Mara gets hit, I think, about an hour later. He reports seeing lights in the cemetery. So he's at the far end of the cemetery by himself. Everybody else is kind of floating around in different places. We actually did a little bit of science, or at least investigative reporting, because he reports seeing these lights near these tombstones. Well, the only plausible explanation we can come up with is we all have flashlights, or torches, as they say in the United Kingdom. And so he says, look, we know where everybody was except for Dale Stevens, the co-producer, and co-director and co-writer too. He was down in the far end of the cemetery in the other end. Everybody else was on the other side of the church, couldn't possibly have been responsible. Their light couldn't get over. But maybe Dale shone his light up here and it bounced off the tombstone. Strange as that sounds. Well, let's go check. So we go find Dale. We say, where were you? About 5 minutes. Well, I was down here. Turn around, flash the light. No. There's, for many different reasons, there's no way the flashlight could have caused that. Fine, Steve, you've been hit. And Steve's like, right, I'd heard this place was odd. Now I know. These lights. Our sound guy put new batteries in his sound equipment when he went in there. These are batteries that you should have gotten us through the entire night and probably the next episode too. Drained in 20 minutes. There's a thing of him on his knees, quite sort of like, we need to go talk to whoever we bought these from because we need a refund. And he's like, rah, rah, rah. And what happened? Well, I just put new batteries in and the darn thing it's gone. And they did it again, gone again. And so you hear reports of energy drains, for lack of a better thing, in a lot of these cases. Yeah. Bingo. His name's Dale Leckie. Dale, you've been hit too. So, and then the coup de grace. Now remember, earlier in the evening, Holly had heard the horse's hooves and weirded her out. So did I, but I didn't tell anyone. So I finally, after the void thing and everything, and I kind of said, you know what, this is getting pretty weird. I think I'm going to go, because Holly was still weirded out. I think I'll try and make her feel better, but I'll tell her, like, I heard them too. in the same place at a slightly different time, but around the same time. You can watch the episode. Her reaction is worth the price of admission, folks, which is free, but still, even if we were charging, it's worth the price of it. She's like, why didn't you say something? And so we're having a moment, and then we both at that, like, we hear it, both of us at the same time, then hear clip clop, and so I look at her and I go, did you? And she goes, did you the horse, you got, yes, you heard it right now? Oh, yeah. Okay, so now
did
we
the
both
camera capture it as well?
No, at that particular time, the camera was off, I believe, filming Dave and Steve, the British guys. And so I had just kind of wandered, I had nothing better to do. I wandered over because Holly was standing in that spot hours later, still trying to commune with the forces of good or evil and trying to make sense of what she felt and heard. So she kept going back to that same spot. So I went, look, I know you feel, I'm going to go tell you that you're not the only, you're not nuts. I heard it too. And as we're there talking and she's about to hit me, we both heard it again at the same time. And this time lasted slightly longer. And that, I believe, was the last weird thing that happened that night. But voids in the sky, two different witnesses in two different places at different times, seeing something like that. The audio anomaly, Steve with the lights. Nothing actually happened to Dave Sadler from the UPIA, but he's been there at other times with time slips. And it's one of those places where you walk out, as we talked about in the last episode. I have no answers. I have theories, and you can go back to the last episode and hear me ramble on about my new age stuff. And just take that theory and put it onto this case too. The idea of communication. Yeah. Maybe we were it's some sort of performance art. Hey, let's, like we're in a video game or something. Let's watch these guys. Let's give them stimuli and see how they react. And it's it's like going to a Cirque du Soleil show in Vegas, which is a pretty good example. I went to see Mystere, which was the original Cirque du Soleil show. They have like 80 in Vegas now. Cirque du Soleil dogs and whatever. But the original show, which is the best one that I've seen still, is kind of like this weird surrealistic circus thing taking place on a stage with people climbing walls and sound. There's no dialogue really, but it's sound and light and movement and imagery. Anyway, I went once with a friend of mine, actually the narrator from Best Evidence, Chris McBride, and I were in Vegas as part of a UFO tour. And we're sitting in the front row of the second section. So there's the main section, stage, main section, and we're back. There's a walkway, sort of it's kind of like the concourse separator. I'll never forget this. So here we are. And the show is always going on. There's always something happening on the stage. But all of a sudden, this guy in a fluorescent cat suit had crawled along the walkway. We didn't know he was there. And he literally popped up right in front of us. And I've never seen anybody that freaked out. Chris was like, ah! And everyone around kind of reacted, and I jumped, but she scared him. You could see the cat guy going, oh, she's sorry, lady. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to. But that's that kind of interactive. If you go to a Cirque du Soleil show like that, you realize you're part of the show.
That's right.
So part of me looks at a case like the St. Edith's Church case, or the Chocolat case, as I call it in the UK, and go, were we part of the show? Is that the equivalent of the cat guy jumping up at the Cirque du Soleil thing? Voids, sounds, everything. And then to make us aware that there is this other intelligence out there, and it is interacting with us and getting us thinking and getting us, in the case of me with the Void or Holly, weirding us out, but all part of the performance. Like, the old Bruce Springsteen video when he pulls Courtney Cox, but if he pulled the non-planned thing up dancing on stage. Bono at Live Aid when he pulled the girls out of the crowd doing bad and just danced with them. That made U2's career as far as I'm concerned. And that kind of interaction with the crowd. I often wonder if something like that, were we the crowd, and whatever was there was interacting with us and pulling us into the play. And so we're observing some of it, but we're also becoming part of it too.
Paul Kimball tonight, folks. If you're just joining us, we're talking about his series called Ghost Cases. We're going to be talking about his feature film, Eternal Kiss very shortly, about vampires, of course, and all things spooky. Fans of the show will remember Paul was here several weeks ago. We were talking about his documentary, Top 10 UFO Sightings. Easy way to get to his website, www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on the picture associated with tonight's guest, and that'll take you right to his website, where there's a wealth of information there, all kinds of free videos for you to watch for free, as Paul said last time. Now, this is very interesting that you mentioned the fact, because you're a filmmaker, that you think that they want people to interact with them in the same sense that you're a filmmaker. Now, do you think that there are parallels there you can draw upon in terms
Absolutely.
of communication? Okay, let's talk about those. Let's go in that direction.
Sure. Well, there's a couple of different types of films you can make. You can make a Michael Bay film where things blow up real good, and there's hot-looking chicks and all the bells and whistles of modern filmmaking. And here's the story, A to B. And by the way, in case you didn't get the A to B part, we're going to hammer you over the head with the story, so there's no possible mistake. You can't possibly mistake that these giant robots from another planet are here to cause trouble. That's the story. That's a Michael Bay film. I guess, there's if you just want to turn your mind off and watch the show, fine. There are better films. There are other films out there where you go, what the heck? The Sixth Sense is a pretty good example. They give you the punchline at the end, but when you're sitting through that film, eventually you view it as a continuum. If you start at point A and you know nothing about what's going on, hey, Bruce Willis, psychiatrist. The time you get to the end of the film, when they do tell you, hey, he's dead, the kid really does see dead people and you're one of them. Somewhere along that way, you could put 50 people in that theater and some won't get it until it's revealed. Some will have an idea as the film goes along. Wait a second now. Is Bruce Willis's character actually dead? I don't know. Maybe. But I'm thinking that's a possibility. To me, that's how with the paranormal, we're at a continuum where I don't think we've reached the punchline yet. We're in the movie. Some people come up with different ideas about what's going on. It's what made M. Night Shyamalan a great filmmaker for his first two films, and then he kind of lost the plot. It's the kind of thing that all great filmmakers, from Orson Welles right up to the modern era, pick whoever your favorite, Chris Nolan, who's done a wonderful job with the Batman films, but was making films like Memento and following before that lower budget films, which were really, you'd have to wait until you got to the end of the film to really understand what had been going on. A film like The Adjustment Bureau, you could walk out of which is mainstream entertainment. It's got Matt Damon and a number of good supporting actors, but so there's a star in it. You can walk out of that film and have a very real conversation about, okay, who are the monitors? Who are these guys? Is that God? Or were they aliens? Or that you can have a conversation about. What about free will? Inception. I can go down Shutter Island. I can go down and give a whole bunch of recent examples of films where even though the filmmaker gives you an answer at the end, if you're the filmmaker, I could interview and say, what do you think the answer at Shutter Island is? Is Leonardo DiCaprio's character... whoops. Sorry. I thought I turned that off.
Spielberg, don't worry about it.
Is Leonardo DiCaprio's character willingly, like he knows that he's insane, or is he just really insane? I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things going on. I had a different interpretation than the person I walked out with. Saw the same movie. I'm sure Scorsese would give one answer. Everybody else has a different answer. That, to me, is what the paranormal is. When I show up at a place like Shocklack and have all that happening, we can all walk out, all of us who were there. If you ask Dave Sadler or Holly Stevens or Steve Mera or any of us, we might all have different interpretations on what it means. Holly might say, well, I think it really was a ghost. Steve Mera might say, well, I think it might have been a poltergeist. Whatever name you hang on it, I just call it weird. And I say there's a form of intelligence interacting with us. And I believe the purpose, as we talked about before and as we're talking about now, is partly entertainment, partly a show. It's a performance art, but with an idea of communicating something to us. And I don't know
where do you draw a line between manipulation, though, And
I don't think it's I know Jacques Vallée has talked about that, deception, manipulation. I don't see that because it would be fairly easy to manipulate us in different ways if it wanted to. I don't feel manipulated. What I take from it, and I think everybody takes a different thing, is I walk out of that cemetery going, all right, maybe everything I thought I knew about this world, this life, us, all of this, maybe, well, as I said before, I have more questions than answers, but maybe I need to, here's another question I need to add on the pile, something else that I need to think about. And I think it does get back to, if you want to call getting us to think manipulating us, sure. But I think it's designed to get us to think. If this is the way we would normally think, like this, I think they're trying to broaden our horizons slowly but surely, maybe one person at a time, in different ways too. We didn't talk about this before, but I meant to mention it. I also think it happens in our dreams, that are subconscious. I know a lot of people have very vivid dreams. I've had them myself. I think that's another way where it can come in and communicate with us. And dreams are a form of abstract art, frankly. I mean, it's like, this happened and this happened. A giant bat came down and ate my cat, and there was a naked girl dancing over here in a volcano. What does that mean? I don't know. But, it sounds interesting.
Freud would know, you see.
Well, Freud, yeah, maybe he'd know or maybe he wouldn't know.
The volcano would be your mother, your father? I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Yeah. But I think it's all part of like the Cirque du Soleil show. You can go see the Cirque du Soleil show and everybody in that theater will walk out having taken something slightly different from it. But what they will take is they were entertained, they were involved, they think. They were given, and they're not manipulating you at Cirque du Soleil. They're not trying to lead you to a particular conclusion, or other than maybe come see the rest of our shows at different theaters. But what they're trying to do is just give you a good show, but as you walk out, go, wow, we hope you think. We hope this has stimulated thought in you about who you are, who this person is, who we all are. And having seen the show 3 times now, that particular show, Mystere, every time I walk out with something different, and it makes me think. That's what great entertainment, that's what great art does. And I think that's what the UFOs and the ghosts, all of that might be related to doing that for us.
Paul Kimball, folks, and Paul, it's often said that good art is when people discuss it after it's over. And yep. I thoroughly believe that as well. We're talking about Paul's art tonight, as well as all things paranormal. In specific, we're talking about his show called Ghost Cases. And we're going to be talking about his feature film, Eternal Kiss, which is about vampires. Fans of the show will know last time he was on, we talked about best evidence, top 10 UFO sightings. Easy way, as always, folks, to get to people's websites, people's books, etc. Just go to the www.nightfrightshow.com website. Click on the picture associated with tonight's guest. That'll take you right to, in Paul's case, right to his website, and there's a wealth of information there you'll be able to get, and his company's called Red Star Films, by the way. Let's go back to Ghost Cases. Now, you said you weren't frightened, but yet Holly was, so there's that different dichotomy there. One person's frightened from something that they see as threatening, perhaps. Another person, like yourself, is more in the exploratory, what is that? So perhaps that was the correct way of interpreting what was taking place?
I wouldn't say Holly was frightened.
Okay.
And if I did, I think she'd book a ticket all the way back to the East Coast from BC and throttle me. I think she was weirded out. She was out of sorts. There's no question. You can see maybe a little bit of fear, but not frightened.
I apologize.
There was another episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was another episode where, well, she's not going to kill you. She'll come back and kill me. So I'm covering my bases here. There was another episode where there's no question I was frightened because I left. It was the case of the baby in the basement. It sounded like a Hardy Boys series or something. But we were at a allegedly haunted farmhouse in rural Nova Scotia, and we had a psychic with us. Very long story short. A lot of paranormal activity reported in the basement, and it was cold. It was February of 2009, isolated. So what you had to do is, if this is the house, visual aids again. So they're in the house, to get to the basement, it's not like a basement in my parents' house where you can walk down from the kitchen. You had to go outside, walk around, and there was a root cellar door. So, and then you go down these crickety little stairs, and they weren't live, but dead spiders everywhere and cobwebs, freezing cold. So there I am, I walk around. We had, the camera crew stayed upstairs with Holly and the psychic. So I'm in the basement alone. I thought it was a good idea at the time. And they start doing this automatic writing session where the psychic starts writing on the paper. And by the way, I'm very skeptical of all psychics. I'm not skeptical of psychic phenomenon. I believe that it's part of being able to tap in to the other or whatever. I believe that can
Communication again.
Yeah. But every time I see a psychic, I'm always very skeptical of them because I've seen too many that charge $3.99 an hour.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
This one, Kelly Muse, is not one of those. And we've worked with her before. She seemed credible. She certainly she's a nice person. And she wasn't charging anyone any money to do this. So I gave her a bit of an instantaneous pass. All right, let's just see where this goes. So she's up doing automatic writing with Holly. Holly's, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. There's baby in the basement. Unbeknownst to them, me alone in the basement with a mini DV camera, because the high def guys were upstairs. I'd set up a mini DV camera, door behind me, sitting on the stairs, kind of waxing poetic about my life and how my brother used to steal my money or whatever it was. No, it was a little more profound than that. And so the camera's stationary. I can hear them though through the floor, so I can get bits and pieces of what they're saying. And you can see me in the show. I can hear them upstairs, and they're baby in the basement. And then we cut back to them. Is there a baby in the basement? Maybe somebody should go down and say, Paul's in the basement. Well, why don't we ask the baby to go down and talk to Paul? No. And you see me going, no, I don't want to talk to the dead baby. Don't send the dead baby down here. Stop it. And Holly's like, yes, send the dead baby down to Paul. And so I can hear this. I've been down there for 40 minutes. I'm freezing my butt off. And by the way, this farmhouse is out in the middle of nowhere. There's no gang of kids who are going to play a practical joke on me or anything. So I'm sitting there, door behind me up here. You can see the whole thing. All of a sudden the door goes, and I will add a sound effect that didn't actually happen. Like this. It opens up behind me, and then I hear it boom. It kind of, it hits because it's not like the door you'd find in a rich person's house in LA. It's got the ground. It hits a knock in the ground, a little piece of dirt, and stops, doesn't open all the way. I look around and go, well, that's weird. And I get up and I look, and the door, when it only opens out, when we had come in originally, there was if you closed it, it's stuck. It was a very sort of, you had to give it a good yank. There was no wind. There had been wind earlier. I knew what it sounded like, gusting. It hadn't blown the door open. I thought the crew was playing a practical joke. I thought I'd go out there and find that the camera guy or Dale Stevens, my co-producer, standing there going, freaked out. Nobody out there. There was a dog about 50 yards away. They had a dog tied out, and the dog could not have gotten there and done this. So I'm just standing out there in the freezing cold in the middle of the night going, what the heck? At the same time as they were saying, if there's a dead baby in the basement, go down and talk to Paul. So I have absolutely no problem admitting I didn't go back in the basement. Yes, I was frightened. Now, being a good television professional, as you know that I am, they were still filming in the house. So I realized if I walked into the house, I didn't know what was going on, but I might break the shot. Something very profound might be happening. So I stood outside for another 40 minutes talking to myself and the dog alone, because I wouldn't go back in the basement, but I wouldn't go into the house because I wanted to wait until somebody came out to get me, so then I'd know that the filming was done. I froze my butt off, and it was really cold, but I preferred freezing my butt off to going back into that basement. So I happily admit I was a coward. I had no desire to go back in that basement at all. They come out, they find me standing there, they go, oh, what are you doing here, Paul? And then I kind of tell them the story. Like, bah, now they think I'm kidding. So we get down, we get the camera, we rewind the tape, and we're all sitting there in the house going, and the production, I can't say on your show what the production manager's choice, it's like, holy, but she summed it up for all of us. Like, Hollywood, what? I said, yeah, and that's why I'm standing out talking to the dog, because I'm not going back in the basement. is that a ghost? Is it a poltergeist? Who knows what that is? Was it anything? Disbelievers would look at that and say, well, the wind blew it open. I discount that because I was there and I know that the wind had been far, I discount that. Can I say that that absolutely was not what it was? I can't say absolutely anything. But in my mind, I know what was going on upstairs. You can see it in the episode, which again, I think is on I'm pretty sure I've uploaded it. It's available online somewhere. Case of the baby in the basement. And you can see this interaction. What's happening upstairs with what I'm hearing downstairs and then the door. A lot of moving parts to that. But yeah, there's a punchline at the end of that, and that's me leaving the basement. And so, yeah, you were talking about being frightened. It wasn't Holly that was frightened. There was one case I saw her, she was genuinely frightened. But it was more often than not me. It wasn't by the time we got to this British cemetery, it was a few months later, and I think most of my fear had
Dissipated?
I'd come to terms with weird stuff happening, and I wasn't afraid anymore. But the baby in the basement case was one of the first episodes we did, and plus the circumstances, it was genuinely,
Creepy.
Creepy.
What's unique about that series? The series that we're talking about right now, by the way, folks, is called Ghost Cases. What's unique about that as compared to all the other? They all seem to be generic at this point. You always see that green screen up there, not a green screen, but the night vision camera, or it's black and white, and they hear a bang and a noise. Nothing ever comes of it, but they all seem to be very generic at this point. What was unique about your?
We didn't do any of that, so.
It was all real.
I did need a job. I said earlier, I will take gigs for money, but I won't take any gig for money. It has to interest me, and I have to like the people I'm working with. Mm-hmm. I did like Holly. Dale and I got along. He had same sort of vision for the show. We had differences, but basically we wanted to do the same kind of show. And when I first went in to meet with the guys from the network, they said, well, how do you envision doing the show? And I think they had this idea that we would do ghost hunters. Boom, 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 green cameras. And, we had the small we had shots. We put little cameras around, stationary cameras. And in one case we picked up, I don't buy the orb thing. I never have. I thought you can explain them all. But there was one that I can't explain because of the circumstances of the case. And maybe we'll get a chance. I don't know. But so we had those little things, but we didn't have the fake night vision cameras and all that. And I just made it very clear. I said, Dale, I'm not going to fake anything. I'm not going to fake. Once I started hosting, I said, I'm not going to fake being afraid or fake being interested. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. And it's television. We edit, and there's shorthand. So I'm not going to say this is a pure documentary of every second. We would spend hours at a location, but everything that happened was absolutely real. And our reactions were real. These are two real people. We would jokingly call ourselves Mully and Sculder, because Mulder and Scully. Yeah. So I was Mully and she was Sculder. And Holly and I were very good friends. So you have these two friends who just want to go out and see what happens. And fortunately, we had a camera crew in tow with us, and I had a co-producer, Dale Stevens, who was keen and okay with that. And we had a network who let us do whatever we want, frankly, because they don't air a whole lot of independent programming. They have shows like Fishing with Friends, which is a guy, it's a lovely show, but it's a guy standing in a river fishing. So, this was something new for them, real television. And they, I don't do this show anymore, so I can say something like that. But yeah, it was a step into more of the real TV network for a regional network like Eastlink. And so I told them when we went in, I said, we're not going to do ghost hunters, because everybody does ghost hunters. Mm-hmm. We're not going to fake it. We're going to do a documentary, and I'm going to shoot it. We're going to shoot it like a documentary. So it's not going to be like this, like a reality show. It's going to be more like this. And we're not going to give your viewers the answers. We're going to give them questions. And we're going to let people make up their own mind. And we're going to treat people who are watching the show like they're not junior high school students. Oh, wait, I'm insulting junior high school students. And
no, I know
my niece just started junior high. They're not preschoolers. We're going to treat them like they're adults. And I think I haven't done the show. It's been 2 years now. There's a checkout lady at the Sobeys where I do my shopping around the corner, and she knows me. So she says, "You're the ghost," and every time I go there, she wants to talk to me about the series. And people in the line are like, But sometimes she's working the late shift, and I've had 20-minute conversations with her because there's no one else around at 3 a.m. when I'm shopping, and she's fast. I run into a lot of other people like that.
It's flattering, and it's been very interesting. I was at HalCon, which is the local science fiction convention here every year, and an old friend of mine helps run it. Asked me to come in at the last minute to run a workshop, a lecture. So I thought, fine, sure, I got nothing better to do. I'll come in and talk about ghosts and UFOs. Never got to the UFO part. Started talking about, first of all, I was up against a Klingon. The guy who played General Martok on Star Trek was there. He was one of the super guest stars. J.G. Hertzler, I think his name is. And next door, he was running a workshop on how to be a Klingon. So look, nobody's coming, and they had other things going on in the big hall, in the dealer's room. Nobody's coming to my lecture. I'll have 6 people there. Who wants to come see this? They didn't even have me, I don't think, in the program. The place was packed. There were 75. There were people standing up. There's even a guy dressed like Stans from Ghostbusters, which I thought was cool. And they just all like ghosts. I never even got to UFOs because questions and a dialogue, and there was some disbelievers and believers and bounce. And I did the baby in the basement case. I told him about that. I ran through that one. It's okay, Paul. I'm looking at the time. I don't think we're going to get the vampires either, so keep going. I want to ask you, though, what are the uphill battles of getting a show like this on our national broadcaster? Well, as I throw that out there very, very succinctly.
Which national you mean any of the mainstream networks?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of the one that should be out there promoting Canadian content and starts with a C and ends with a C.
Well, there's, the CBC wouldn't be a network that you would do a show like Ghost Cases for. It's just...
Why not?
It's just not their mandate. Their mandate, even in the halcyon days of the CBC, you wouldn't expect to see a show like that. There are other networks, and the great thing, there are upsides and downsides to the specialty channel universe that we live in now, which is really a phenomenon of the last 10 to 15 years. You get networks like Space. Now, Space does a lot fewer documentaries than they did when I started. Most of my early docs and the UFOs were all for Space. You get the History Channel. You have, I think Ghost Hunters from the US Outdoor Life Network, for some reason, programs them. But you have all of these places where you can go. It doesn't have to be the CBC. The CBC can do what it does. And I have a problem with what it does, but the problem isn't that they won't air ghost cases or ghost shows. That's fine. The real problem is that with all of these, I don't think people understand how television works. There's a pot of money. Some of it's government, some of it's from the private sector, subsidies, all sorts of stuff in Canada. It's a pot of money. It hasn't gotten any bigger. But when they created all of these new television stations, all of a sudden, yes, you have a lot more shows, but you don't have any more money. So it's like a cake. Instead of 5 pieces of the cake, now you've got 50 pieces, and those budgets keep getting smaller and smaller. So on the one hand, glass half empty, or glass half full, more opportunities. So in the pre-specialty channel universe, I couldn't have done these UFO documentaries. CBC, CTV, they wouldn't commission stuff like that. And they still don't. In the post-specialty channel universe with Space and History, sure, lots of opportunities. That's
for Canadians? For Canadians?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I've been in business for 12 years. I mean, I couldn't... CRTC rules, there's CanCon requirements. Even if they don't want to air Canadian content, they have to. And they have to commission independent Canadian content. The downside is budgets have continually gotten tighter and tighter and tighter. And I know if you tell somebody that we shot a documentary for $120,000, they'll go, oh my God, that's a lot of money. It is. But I can itemize for you where all of it goes. And not a whole lot of that, I'm not going to cry poverty, but not a whole, it's like producers aren't getting rich. There's a reason why I became a director. I'm not trained in it. I needed to do more than one thing in order to make a living. Yeah. So many of us became producer, writer, and it worked out. Producer, writer, director, editor. I eventually learned how to use Media 100 and edit my own films. It's a wonderful thing. It allows me to really control the story. But there was a financial reason for doing it, which is I have to do all these things. I can't just be a producer. Now, I was cool with that because I used to manage a band and play in a band and write the songs. I love that stuff. but there's an awful lot of producers from an older generation who couldn't make that transition. So there's good and bad in it. But like with a series like Ghost Cases, I'm not even going to tell you what our budget was on that, but let me tell you, I went to LA and I was talking to producers down there who they knew I had done a ghost show, and they had a couple of people who used to be involved with one of the ghost shows in the US. I won't say which one. And they were looking to do a new show with them as the host. So a friend of mine set up this meeting with this other guy. Nothing ever came of it, but we're sitting there having lunch and just chatting. And he said, look, you could be the guy. You could direct and help us produce it. Sure, yeah, no, I'd love to. Said, well, what was your budget? That was his question. And I think I said about $450,000. I was guessing. And he said, per episode, that's ballpark. And I said, per episode? That's the series. And not all of that was real money. Some of that was in kind. And he just looked at me, and he almost spit up his cup. He said, whoa, what? What? So you did the quick math. He went, per episode, oh my God, what kind of car do you drive? You're clearly not driving the same kind of car that I am. I said, I got a 7-year-old Honda. But, and they were to them, the mind boggled that you could do a television series and do it reasonably well for anything less than, a couple of $1 million. Just like, wow, that's crazy talk. And, in Canada, we were forced to get by and do things a little differently. But I think that allows us it forces us to be a little more independent. And it's kind of like the red-green school of television making. I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but give me some duct tape. And, we have a lot of duct tape filmmaking up here. But I kind of like it. It's like you sort of ride on the edge of the knife. It's good. They're a little too cushy down in the U.S.
Okay. Paul Kimball, folks, he's a filmmaker, obviously, from Nova Scotia. We're talking about some of the products that he's put out. Ghost Cases, Eternal Kiss, which we're going to get to in 2 seconds, about vampires. And, of course, his best evidence, top 10 UFO sightings, www.nightfrightshow.com. As I'm rushing through this, just click on tonight's guest's picture associated with tonight's guest. That'll take you right to his website. And there you go. I do a lot of things with my hands. So what can I tell you? Eternal Kiss, vampires. Let's get to vampires. We've got 4 minutes left.
It's my first feature film, very low budget in the sense that I'll just say it was under $1 million. And the vampires are in it. I kind of call them Eternals, but it's a love triangle. I just use the vampire meme to tell basically a classic love story, like boy meets girl, girl happens to be vampire, other vampire happens to want guy too, and bad stuff happens. And then maybe good stuff at the end. But, these are... People have... It sort of got released to play at the Atlantic Film Festival. I did a screening. It's finished. And then I've kept it back because I want to tinker with it a little bit. And I've got another larger feature film that's a co-production with the United Kingdom that looks to be moving forward over the next few months. When that one's done, then I'll release Eternal Kiss to wide audiences, and sort of after I have a bigger one in my pocket. But I like Eternal Kiss. People who've watched it, some people get it, some people don't, because they quote Byron. These are characters who in the modern era go around quoting Byron as if it's something you would do normally. Well, I do quote Byron. I mean, that's my sort of pickup line in a bar or whatever, it's like, trot out some Byron. Fate, time, occasion, chance, change. To these things, to these all things are subject, save eternal love. It doesn't work the way you think it would, but that to me is a sign of who I'm telling it to. But, it's very much an old school vampire film, very, the lighting, everything. It was very much designed to be almost like one critic here called it a chamber piece. And he meant it in a good way. He gave us a very good review. A very good reviewer out here called Ron Foley McDonald, and teaches classes in film. And he said, look, this is a guy who knows something about film. I was drawing my influences from films like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the original Dracula, Nosferatu, and a bit of an homage, but a modern piece too. And then you've got guys like Jason Eisner out here who make films like Hobo with a Shotgun, where crazy hobos run around shooting demon guys. And that's fine. Jason's a good kid, and his film had a much bigger budget, and he had Rutger Hauer. And it's fun. it's just not the kind of film I wanted to make. But the nice thing is there's room for all of us to make different, interesting films. I will plug a guy named Josh McDonald, director named Evan Kelly, did a film called The Corridor. And it's been picked up for distribution now in the U.S., but it's been in a lot of festivals, won awards. Wonderful film about weird paranormal stuff and the mind. And if you get a chance to see a film, folks, called The Corridor, I would recommend that. It's out there now. It'd probably be on Canadian television, TMN or something very soon. But it's a really cool film. I think you'd like it, Brent. It's part of that thing where at the end of the film, as we were talking about earlier, you kind of go, well, I'm not actually sure what the corridor was. And then you can start talking with your friends about, well, what really happened? Was it all in his mind, or was it real, or is it aliens or whatever? And that's an interesting kind of film. And there's a bit of that in Eternal Kiss, although we do give a punchline at the end. So, at the end we wrap it up like Sixth Sense or whatever. But that's a theme that I continue to explore. The next one is very much about life and death and love. And we kind of bill it as the Adjustment Bureau meets Shutter Island with a little bit of Inception. So there's supernatural elements and stuff to it too. It's a wonderful sci-fi fantasy, the supernatural. There's a reason people keep writing in all genres, books, all of it, because it allows us to explore all sorts of things, which is why I like the paranormal. Because again, it forces us to think. I hate the term outside the box, but it does. It forces us to think outside the box.
Fresh new
and
ideas.
Examine the possibilities.
Exactly. I have that in my my CV somewhere for this show. Actually, we look at possibilities and examine them. So there you go. You write your own music as well.
I used to be a musician. I retired from the music industry in the late 90s. So I occasionally go busk or pick up a open mic night, but I did put my own music in a film years ago, but since then, I hire other people to do it who are better at it than I am.
Fair enough.
It's good to know what you're good at and good to know what you're not.
There you go. Folks, we're going to wrap up now. We've been speaking with Paul Kimball. We've been talking about his films, his TV products. Best Evidence is one of them. Top 10 UFO sightings. Great documentary, was on the Space Channel. Another one, Ghost Cases. And his feature film Eternal Kiss, which is all about vampires. Easy way to get to his website, www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on the picture associated with tonight's show. That'll take you right to his website where you can watch all these things for free. Isn't that great? Thank you, Paul. That's terrific. Paul, I want to thank you for being a super trooper and doing 2 shows back to back. That's wonderful. By the way, folks, we changed shirts. It's the same day. It's the first show.
Different hats, different shirts.
There you go. Yeah.
See, we delivered the punchline at the end.
See, well, I guess we should have let them, whatever. I want to thank you again, and please come back. Don't be a stranger. It was a real pleasure, and I like speaking with intelligent folks, and definitely you're one with a vision as well. I'm Brent Holland from Night Fright. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
You're listening to Night Fright and your host, Brent Holland. The time is now. Your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio.